The year is 218 BC. The place is the frozen, windswept passes of the Alps mountains that no army has ever crossed with elephants. A column of men stretches as far as the eye can see, climbing a narrow, ice-slicked trail. They are not Roman, they are Carthaginian, and they are following a man who has sworn an oath that most would call madness. When he was 9 years old, his father took him to a temple altar, made him place his hands on the still bleeding entrails of a sacrificed bull, and forced him to swear, "I will never be a friend to Rome. I will never make peace with Rome. I will hate Rome with every breath I take, and I will destroy Rome or die trying." That boy's name was Hannibal Barca. Now he is 29 years old. He has an army of 50,000 infantry, 9,000 cavalry, and 37 war elephants. He has marched from Spain, crossed the Pyrenees, fought his way through Gaul, and now he is doing what no general in history has ever done, leading a massive army with elephants over the highest mountains in Europe. The snow is deep. The cold is killing his men. The elephants are slipping on the ice, tumbling into crevasses, refusing to move. His soldiers are deserting. His guides are lying. The mountain tribes are attacking from the cliffs, rolling boulders down on the column. Hannibal has lost half his army, but he does not stop. He cannot stop. He has sworn an oath. At the bottom of the Alps lies the rich, green plain of northern Italy. And beyond that plain lies Rome, the city that humiliated Carthage, that stole her islands, that demanded her weapons, that killed her heroes. Hannibal will not make peace. He will not retreat. He will bring the war to Rome's doorstep, and he will teach the Romans what it means to be afraid. This is the story of Hannibal Barca, Carthage's master tactician, the man who crossed the Alps with elephants, the enemy that Rome could never forget. To understand Hannibal, you must first understand the conflict that shaped him, the First Punic War. Carthage was a Phoenician city-state on the coast of North Africa, near modern Tunis. It was a maritime empire, rich from trade, with a powerful navy and colonies across the western Mediterranean. Rome was a rising land power on the Italian peninsula. The two empires clashed over Sicily, a strategic island between them. The war lasted 23 years, from 264 to 241 BC. Rome, which had no navy at the beginning, built a fleet, invented a boarding device called the corvus, and turned naval battles into land battles. Carthage lost. Rome demanded a huge indemnity, forced Carthage to give up Sicily, and then, in a cynical act of aggression, seized the islands of Sardinia and Corsica as well. Carthage was humiliated. The Barcid family, Hannibal's father, Hamilcar Barca, had led the Carthaginian forces in Sicily. He had fought bravely, but been forced to surrender. He never forgave Rome. He took his son Hannibal to Spain to rebuild Carthaginian power and to prepare for the next war. Hannibal grew up in a camp, surrounded by soldiers, watching his father fight, listening to his father's stories of Roman treachery. He learned to ride, to hunt, to command. He learned that Rome was the enemy and that the enemy must be destroyed. When Hamilcar died in battle, Hannibal's brother-in-law, Hasdrubal, took command. When Hasdrubal was assassinated, the army chose Hannibal. He was 26 years old. He had never commanded an army in a major war, but he had been preparing for this his entire life. The spark that ignited the Second Punic War was a city. Saguntum, on the eastern coast of Spain, was a Roman ally. It lay south of the Ebro River, which had been agreed as Carthage's northern limit. Hannibal besieged Saguntum. The Romans warned him to stop. He ignored them. After 8 months, Saguntum fell. Rome declared war. Hannibal did not wait for the Romans to invade Spain or Africa. He decided to invade Italy, not by sea, where Rome's navy was superior, but by land, over the Pyrenees, through southern Gaul, across the Alps. It was a plan so audacious, so insane, that no Roman general even considered it possible. That was why it might work. In the spring of 218 BC, Hannibal left his base in Spain. He had perhaps 90,000 infantry, 12,000 cavalry, and 37 elephants. He crossed the Pyrenees, losing men to desertion and fighting. He crossed the Rhone River in southern Gaul, outsmarting a Roman force sent to stop him. And then he reached the Alps. The Alps in autumn are treacherous. Snow already covered the high passes. The paths were narrow, often only a few feet wide, with sheer drops on one side and vertical rock on the other. The local tribes attacked from above, rolling boulders and shooting arrows. Hannibal's men had to build roads as they climbed, cutting into the rock, filling crevasses with timber and earth. The elephants were the biggest problem. They could not climb steep slopes. They slipped on ice. Some fell into ravines and had to be abandoned. The cold killed men and animals. The soldiers, exhausted and terrified, began to mutter. But Hannibal walked among them. He talked to them. He shared their food. He helped push wagons. He showed them that he would not ask them to do anything he would not do himself. After 15 days, the army emerged from the Alps. Hannibal had lost half his men, perhaps 20,000 dead, plus thousands more deserted or left behind. He had lost most of his elephants. But he was in Italy. The Romans had no idea he was coming. The terror was about to begin. The first major battle was at the Trebia River in December 218 BC. The Roman army, commanded by the consul Tiberius Sempronius Longus, was camped nearby. Hannibal knew that the Romans were overconfident. He also knew that his own men were hungry and cold, but they were hardened by the mountains. He set a trap. He sent a small force across the river to provoke the Romans. The Romans took the bait. They crossed the icy river, wading up to their waists in freezing water. They were exhausted before the battle even began. Then Hannibal released his main force. His cavalry, superior to the Roman cavalry, swept around the Roman flanks. His hidden infantry attacked from the rear. The Roman army was crushed. Only 10,000 of the original 40,000 escaped. The rest were killed or captured. It was a stunning victory. The Romans had never lost a battle like this. But Hannibal did not march on Rome. He knew that his army was too small to besiege the city. Instead, he marched south, recruiting allies among the Gallic tribes of northern Italy, building his strength. The Romans were terrified. They elected a dictator, Quintus Fabius Maximus, and gave him command. Fabius adopted a new strategy: avoid open battle with Hannibal, harass his supply lines, follow him, but do not fight him, starve him out. This strategy earned Fabius the nickname Cunctator, the delayer. It was wise, it was effective, and it was deeply unpopular. The Roman people wanted revenge, not patience. In 216 BC, the Roman army marched south to face Hannibal in open battle. The place was Cannae, on the Adriatic coast. The Romans had 80,000 infantry and 6,000 cavalry, the largest army Rome had ever fielded. Hannibal had perhaps 40,000 infantry and 10,000 cavalry. He was outnumbered 2 to 1. But he had a plan. The Battle of Cannae, August 2nd, 216 BC, is considered one of the greatest tactical masterpieces in military history. Hannibal arranged his army in a crescent formation, but not a crescent facing outward. He placed his weakest infantry in the center, arranged in a convex curve toward the Romans. On the wings, he placed his best infantry. Behind them, on the flanks, he placed his cavalry, the heavy Gallic and Spanish horsemen on the left, the lighter Numidian horsemen on the right. The Romans formed their traditional triple line, with heavy infantry in the center, allies on the wings. They advanced in a dense mass, pushing into the center of Hannibal's crescent. As they pushed, the crescent began to bend backward. The center retreated, but the wings held. The Romans, thinking they were winning, pushed harder. They funneled deeper and deeper into the trap. Then Hannibal gave the signal. His cavalry on the left charged the Roman right wing, smashed it, and swept behind the Roman line. His cavalry on the right charged the Roman left wing, smashed it, and joined the left. The Roman cavalry was destroyed. Now Hannibal's cavalry was behind the Roman army. The wings of Hannibal's infantry, which had been holding, now closed inward. The Romans were surrounded, completely surrounded. They could not retreat. They could not maneuver. They were packed so tightly that they could not even raise their arms to fight. Hannibal's infantry advanced, stabbing with short swords, killing men who could not defend themselves. The slaughter continued for hours. By nightfall, the Roman army had ceased to exist. According to the Roman historian Livy, 47,000 Romans were killed, including 80 senators and the consul Lucius Aemilius Paulus. Hannibal lost about 6,000 men. It was the worst defeat in Roman history. The road to Rome was open. Hannibal's cavalry commander, Marbal, urged him to march on the capital immediately. "You know how to win a victory, Hannibal," he said. "You do not know how to use it." Hannibal hesitated. His army was exhausted. He had no siege equipment. He believed that if he marched on Rome, the city's walls would hold, and he would be trapped between the defenders and the Roman armies still in the field. He refused. Marhabal's words became famous. "The gods have not given all their gifts to the same man. You know how to win, Hannibal, but not how to use victory." Hannibal did not march on Rome. He would never have another chance. After Cannae, Hannibal spent 15 years in Italy, roaming the peninsula, winning battles, destroying Roman armies. He won at Herdonia, at Tarentum, at Capua. He destroyed the Roman army at the Battle of Lake Trasimene, another ambush masterpiece. But he could not take Rome. The Romans, following Fabius's strategy, refused to fight him in open battle. They attacked his allies, starved his supplies, and slowly ground him down. Hannibal's army shrank. His elephants died. His Gallic allies deserted. He sent messages to his brother Hasdrubal in Spain, begging for reinforcements. Hasdrubal marched across the Alps in 207 BC, following his brother's route. But the Romans intercepted his messenger, learned his plan, and met him at the Metaurus River. Hasdrubal was defeated and killed. His head was cut off and thrown into Hannibal's camp. Hannibal saw his brother's head and knew that the war was lost. For 4 more years, he held out in southern Italy. But he could not win. In 203 BC, he was recalled to Carthage to defend the city against a Roman invasion led by Scipio Africanus. The two generals met at Zama in North Africa in 202 BC. This time, Hannibal had no cavalry advantage. Scipio had studied Hannibal's tactics and had learned to counter them. The battle was hard, but the Romans won. Hannibal fled the field. Carthage sued for peace. The terms were brutal. Carthage had to give up its navy, pay a massive indemnity, and could not wage war without Roman permission. Hannibal, the greatest enemy Rome had ever faced, was still alive. He became a politician, reforming Carthage's corrupt government, paying off the indemnity ahead of schedule. The Romans, fearing him even in peacetime, demanded his surrender. Hannibal fled into exile. He traveled to Tyre, to Ephesus, to Crete. He became an advisor to King Antiochus III of Syria, who was preparing to fight Rome. When Antiochus was defeated, Hannibal fled again. He ended up in Bithynia, in northwestern Turkey, still plotting, still scheming, still trying to find a way to destroy Rome. The Romans hunted him. In 183 BC, the Bithynian king, under pressure from Rome, agreed to surrender Hannibal. Hannibal, now 64 years old, took poison from a ring he always carried. His last words, according to legend, were, "Let us relieve the Romans from their long anxiety, since they think it too long to wait for the death of an old man." He died in exile, far from Carthage, far from his elephants, far from the Alps he had crossed in glory. The Romans had never defeated him in battle. They had only outlasted him. So what can we learn from Hannibal Barca? First, that audacity wins. Hannibal's plan to cross the Alps with elephants was insane. No one had done it. No one thought it could be done. That is precisely why it worked. The Romans never expected an invasion from the north. They never expected elephants. Hannibal's willingness to take impossible risks made him unbeatable for 15 years. Second, that tactics matter more than numbers. At Cannae, Hannibal was outnumbered 2-1. He won by using the terrain, the formation, the psychology of his enemy. He let the Romans push into a trap. He did not fight their strength. He exploited their weakness. That is the essence of tactical genius. Third, that logistics win wars. Hannibal could win battles, but he could not win the war. He had no siege equipment. He had no navy to resupply him. He had no permanent base in Italy. The Romans, by contrast, had endless resources, endless manpower, endless patience. Hannibal could not destroy Rome because he could not sustain his army long enough to do so. The lesson is brutal but true. Genius without logistics is a flame that burns bright but dies fast. Fourth, that an oath can be a prison. Hannibal swore to destroy Rome. He kept that oath for his entire life. But the oath also trapped him. He could not make peace. He could not compromise. He could not build a lasting settlement. He was bound to fight until he died, and die he did, in exile, alone, with poison in his veins. The oath that made him great also destroyed him. Today, Hannibal is remembered as one of the greatest military commanders in history. Napoleon studied his tactics. The German military theorist Schlieffen used Cannae as a model for his plan to encircle the French army. Modern military academies still teach the Battle of Cannae as a perfect example of double envelopment. Hannibal's name is a byword for tactical brilliance, and the elephants, those poor doomed elephants, have become a symbol of audacity, of the impossible made possible. You can still see the routes Hannibal took. You can still stand in the Alps and imagine the elephants slipping on the ice, the soldiers huddling against the cold, the young commander walking among them, whispering encouragement, refusing to give up. He never gave up. Even when Rome was ascendant, even when his allies abandoned him, even when his brother's head was thrown into his camp, Hannibal Barca did not give up. He fought until the poison stopped his heart. That is the mark of a true enemy of Rome. That is the mark of a man who crossed the Alps with elephants and nearly brought the greatest empire of the ancient world to its knees. Hannibal Barca, Carthage's master tactician, the enemy that Rome could never defeat in battle, and the legend that will never ever fade.